welcome back to the channel, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you may be watching this. Back with another 7.5 video for the differences playlist. And today we're going to be going over some aircraft general differences. Now, obviously the other systems that we've gone over, you could say those are aircraft general as well. Because they're on every aircraft. But really what I mean here is we're going to be talking about size and weight and things that are just the aircraft in general. Sorry, that is a terrible joke. Anyway, so we're going to be starting with that today. It shouldn't be too long of a video. Hopefully it's only about 12 slides, and we'll get through it as efficiently as possible. Again, thanks for coming back, and here we go. So, talking about the differences between 7.5 and 7.6, like we have been for the whole series, right? The 7.6 is a much bigger airplane. It's a wide-body airplane, where the 7.5 is a narrow-body. With that being said, things that are going to be different are going to be, wingspan, for example. The actual size of the aircraft. So the wingspan on a 7.5 is roughly 134 feet 9 inches with winglets. Now that's the key, is with winglets. Because if you're on an airplane that doesn't have winglets, you're going to shrink that by about 10 feet. So it's going to be about 124 feet. Roughly. I can't remember the exact number without winglets. I think it's 124 even, I think. I don't remember, but it's about 10 feet shorter than with winglets. Okay. Now, some people may care about the distance between the trucks. That's 24 feet, and then your horizontal stabilizer is going to be 49 feet, 11 inches wide. Again, if your wings can fit, your horizontal stabilizer is probably going to fit. But some people like those numbers. Now, if you remember... Well, I say if you remember, I don't think I made a video about aircraft general for the 7.6, but the 7.6-300, for example, is 180 feet 3 inches long. And it's 52 feet tall at the tail. So the 7.5 is going to be a little bit smaller than that. It's going to be 155 feet or 154 feet 1 inch to the tail, 155 feet 3 inches to the top of the rudder. If that makes sense, because the rudder kind of sits a little bit farther back than the actual end of the aircraft. So the top of your rudder is going to be 155 feet 3 inches from the nose. And then your height is another thing that kind of can be important depending on where you're going. I know Denver, I think, has a bridge that you can go under. Well, you can't if you're on the 7.5 or 7.6, because the 7.6 is 52 feet tall. This one's 44.5 feet tall. I think the bridge at Denver is something like 42 feet. So you can try, but you're not going to make it. You'll go right into it. So you can do anything on your last day, though, right? So, just keep that in mind. I am not advocating that you try and go under the bridge at Denver in a 7.5 or 7.6. I just want to make that very clear. Because heaven forbid somebody actually take what I say seriously and say, oh, I'm just going to go underneath the bridge because I can do it. It's my last day. So, I want to make that clear. Do not go underneath the bridge at Denver. Okay, turning radius. That's another thing that's big for big body aircraft, right? Because if you get on too small of a runway, you're not able to make the turn to do a full 180 if you need to. If you need to taxi down the runway and then do the 180 at the end or something like that. You need at least 120 feet to be able to make that turn for that 180 turn. On a 7.5, 120 feet. So that's your minimum width. Obviously, most runways that you're probably going to be going into are probably somewhere around 150. But you can't go into something that's only 100 feet wide because you won't be able to make that turn around. Or just be cognizant you can't make that 180-degree turn. Only 120 feet. Now, the other part of making your turns like this is going to be keeping an obstacle away from your nose. Okay, so we want to make sure that we want to keep any obstacle that is within 15 feet of the wing. We don't want to turn away from an obstacle within 15 feet of the wing or within 26 feet of the nose. And I know all of you have your eyes calibrated and you know exactly how far 15 feet and 26 feet is. That's why you have wing walkers. But make sure you're paying attention to them. And if it just seems too close, maybe don't make that turn. That's just my, you know, I'm just going to give you that. Do with it what you will. You can do what you want when you're in the airplane. Remember, I'm not a pilot, so you do what you want. I'm just telling you what my opinion would be, and that would be to not turn if something seemed too close to the aircraft. I really don't want to see anybody that's ever seen my videos on one of those YouTube channels that only does bad things that happen in aviation. Just saying. Now, flight deck controls are going to be identical to the 7.6, but the 7.5 has runway turnoff lights that are going to be located on the nose wheel strut, rather than the wing root. Boy, could not say that fast if I wanted to. So, basically what that means is you just got more lights on the nose. It's going to be brighter, right? You got runway turnoff lights that are going to be there. They're going to be angled to show you those runway turnoffs. Versus in your wing route like you do on the 7.6. Now, the next slide, these are going to be generic numbers that come along with the 7.5. This does not include things like a high altitude switch or anything like that. So, predominantly, max altitude is the max altitude. It's always 41,000 feet on the 7.5. So that's your max ceiling. That's as high as you can go. Max takeoff and landing altitude, 8,400 feet. Pressure altitude, I should say, pressure altitude is 8,400 feet. Again, this is without a high altitude switch or a high pressure switch in the cockpit. I know that there are some aircraft out there that have those, and if you push them, it puts your max takeoff and landing altitude up to like 14,000 or something like that. This is not that. This is just the base aircraft. Max runway slope is going to be the same, plus or minus 2%. And then your max takeoff and landing tailwinds, 15 is, you know, the main number, but there are some that are only restricted to 10. So just be cognizant of that and make sure that you're following your company's procedures, your company's policies when it comes to their max takeoff and landing tailwind limits, because there are some airplanes that are only 10 knots. Predominantly, though, you're probably going to see 15 knots, but just be aware that it may be different. Same thing with the weights. Obviously, this is a picture. I should have taken the picture of my GSI guy airplane and put it in here because that would have been good marketing. But I'm terrible at that, and I'm the only person that does this, so that's why I have the generic 7.5-200 in here. Your max taxi weight, your max takeoff, max land, max zero fuel. Okay, so these are, again, I say generic, but I don't mean generic. I mean that they're one set of numbers that are common amongst the 7.5s. And what that means is they can vary depending on the aircraft. If it's an ETOPS airplane, if it's not an ETOPS airplane, if it's if it's got different stuff in it because that's what the company ordered at the time. Your weight and balance can be a little bit different amongst the airplanes. This is the one that I'm familiar with, so that's the numbers that I used. So the variations aren't going to be much. The variations are probably going to be maybe 1,000 to 2,000 pounds, but you get the idea of how much different this is compared to a 7.6 that has a max takeoff of somewhere around 412 for the 412,000 pounds. Again, it fluctuates depending on the aircraft, but 412,000 pounds versus 251,000 pounds. So we can see the difference in the aircraft as far as that goes. And the other thing here is look at the wheels. So X-Plane does some really cool things, and they are very detailed in a lot of things. There's only a couple things I could probably critique when it comes to the airplane designs. I can't design anything like that in X-Plane, but the wheels, notice how they tilt. Right? So they tilt nose up, right? If you look at it on a 7.6, they tilt the other way. They tilt nose down. I will forever die on this hill saying that they tilt the wrong way on the 7.6. because it's weird to me that the front wheels would hit first and then the trucks would come down. I would be used to more something like this, where the back of the truck would hit first and then level out. But either way, that's a difference between the two airplanes. Now, I'm going to ask this and see who can guess it. I'm going to guess some of you, at least anyway, if you've been in any of my classes or have ever listened to me talk about this. Why are the wheels tilted? Like, some people will say, well, it's because they have squat switches or tilt switches, and that's what tells the airplane that it's in flight. And that's true. It is. But that's not the reason why they tilt. The reason why they tilt is actually a very generic reason. It's the fact that they need to fit inside the wheel well. And it's just the way the wheel well is designed, to where they have to tilt to be able to fit when they get retracted. And that's why one tilts one way and the other one tilts the other way. Now, they do use hydraulics to shove them into that position, but that's the only reason why they do it. And then, of course, well, they tilt, so let's put a squat switch on it or a tilt switch on it to say that the aircraft's in flight, or as an indication to tell that the aircraft is in flight. And then not only do they have the tilt switches on the main gear, but you have a nose gear extension switch too, because when the weight comes off that nose gear, it extends out. And when it extends out, you have two pieces of metal that come together to tell the aircraft it's in flight. Now, again, this has nothing to do with the slide that's here, but I'm going to tell you why there's two different switches. So we have a nose gear extension switch, which is located up here in the nose gear, obviously, from where it extends. That tells your warning system. So like GPWIS, terrain warnings, all that kind of stuff. Right? Wind shear, all of that is based off of your nose gear. So anything that's a warning is based off your nose gear. Anything that's system related, meaning that your equipment cooling system on the 7.6, your pneumatic system in the 7.5, pressurization, all that kind of stuff is based off of truck tilt, because that your aircraft is completely off the ground, and they've kept them separate from warning systems to actual like aircraft systems. Okay, so aircraft systems are based off of truck tilt, warning systems are based off of nose gear. Not a huge deal, just a slight difference between the two that I wanted to point out. All right, flight deck and supernumerary. Now, here is the crazy thing. Supernumerary doesn't technically exist anymore if you fly in the cargo world. Because supernumerary, it was supposed to be, I think the definition has changed a little bit. Now it's somebody who's in the cockpit who's not trained as a flight attendant or something like that. So in the cargo world, since we don't have flight attendants, you can't have a supernumerary, because you can't have somebody who's not trained as something you don't have. So it actually changes to authorized persons is what that's changed to now, and it's kind of an annoying thing, because they seem to just change the words for changing the word's sake. They could have just left it as supernumerary and maybe just added to the definition. I don't know. Whatever. There are some people who can't even pronounce the word, so it's fine. Authorized persons works as well. So really, you can see here it is a little bit different shape as far as the 7.5 versus the 7.6 is concerned. It's a little bit smaller. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. This picture doesn't really do a whole lot of justice for it, because it makes the observer seats look like they're farther away from the FO and the captain than they are, when in reality your legs are pretty much right against their back. So good luck with that. Supernumerary is kind of the same as what it is on the 300. You're right next to the bathroom, so it's kind of an uncomfortable thing to sit in as well. But still, you get the idea of the just size difference between the 7.5 and the 7.6. Now, this might not seem like much of a difference, and it's not really, but we've got all these discrete lights that are on the very, very top of the overhead panel. And when we're looking here, entry doors, EMER doors, cargo doors, access doors, all the same as the 7.6. PDOs, AOAs, all the same as the 7.6. Everything except for that highlighted one is going to be the same as the 7.6. Now with the highlighted one that's here, the Mach speed trim. So what is Mach speed trim? So there is a system that helps protect the aircraft from what's called mock tuck. Okay, so when you're at high speeds, the system helps protect the nose down attitude that occurs at high speed. So it's trying to keep the aircraft from doing this, and it automatically does it by trimming it to keep the nose up. If this light is illuminated, and if you get the Mach speed trim message on the iCast, that tells you that that system has failed. So it's not automatically keeping you in trim to prevent that Mach tuck issue that comes up. It only works when the autopilot is not engaged, because when the autopilot's engaged, guess what? The autopilot's the one protecting you from that. So, yeah. So if the autopilot's not engaged, that's the only time you're ever going to get this light, is if it's not working during that particular time. The 7.6 doesn't have this issue, so the 7.6 doesn't have that light. So that's the only change there on your discrete lights. Now, looking at your doors, I mean, really, it's all the same as the 7.6. You got your forward door, your E&E compartment, you got your forward cargo, aft cargo, and then you got a main cargo door that pops up there as well. But the big thing here is notice anything that's different. Notice anything that's missing. Nobody? Okay. On the left-hand side of this, you can see over here there is something missing. The bulk cargo door. Okay, so on the 7.6, there's a bulk cargo door that's on that side. 7.5 doesn't have it. It's got everything else, but it doesn't have the bulk cargo door. Now, another key difference with this is going to be your main cargo door versus fire, or not versus, but your main cargo door and fire alarms. So on the overhead panel, you'll see something that looks like this if you're in the cargo world. If you're in the passenger world, ignore this part. It's not gonna apply to you. But in the cargo world, you've got a main cargo door and a main cargo door / fire light. Okay, or it's a light and a horn, I guess. So if we think about this, I've got on the center instrument panel, right in front of the FO, on the FO side, there's usually a little red light that comes on that says main cargo door whenever the main cargo door is not locked, latched, or closed. And then we have a cargo door oral that goes off if you try and take off with the airplane with the door open or not latched or locked. So when that happens, you're obviously going to, not continue with the takeoff, because as soon as you push the thrust levers up, the alarm's going to go off. You're going to be like, oh, something's wrong. And you're probably going to end up rejecting the takeoff. The other time that this thing goes off is hopefully obvious. It's a fire, main cargo fire. So on the 7.6, you have a fire indication. You have the main cargo light that shows up on the panel. On the 7.5, you have this panel all the way up at the top there of your overhead, that horn on this side, this thing right here, that thing's going to go off whenever you have a main cargo fire. The switch right here, you hit it, and it silences that alarm. It silences this horn. So, again, this panel does not exist in a 7.6, but it exists here in the 7.5. It goes off for a main cargo door being open, or a main cargo fire. So that horn is for the fire, or a door being open, the main cargo door being open. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too painful. What am I at? 19 minutes. That's not too bad. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and that way you get an update every time I put out a video. You can follow us on LinkedIn, follow me on Facebook. What else? You can send me an email at brandon@gsiguy.com. For anything, you can leave a comment down below if you have any issues, questions, or anything you want me to go over. Also, if you want to tell your stories about how you got in aviation and you want to talk about why you're in aviation and stuff like that, you can reach out to me again here in the comments on LinkedIn at GSI Guy, or through Brandon at gsi.guy.com. And I want to start a new series where I start having aviation talks, and we start talking about why people get into aviation, why they love it, and what they do through the day. And it doesn't matter if you're a pilot, a mechanic, if you're a scheduler, dispatcher, whatever. I want to get conversations going from everywhere. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me, and we can go from there. Otherwise, guys, I really appreciate you sticking around, and we'll talk to you on the next one. See ya.